where we tell stories of amazing women who've been able to go from challenge into triumph. I am your host, Nancy Taya Aragbai, and I'm so excited today because I have with me the amazing Rashida McKenzie, who is phenomenal, doing amazing things for women in the marketplace. Rashida, can you go ahead and just share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I am Rashida McKenzie. I like to say I move women in business from feeling stuck to unstoppable, and in a way that allows them to focus on themselves and growing in their leaving space for what I call grace, and really doing it in a way where they don't have to sacrifice themselves, their serenity, their family, or their success.
I love that. They don't have to sacrifice themselves or their serenity or their families or their success. I feel like sometimes, and I am victim of this, where you kind of just give all of yourself to something or someone, and like sometimes you can, in a sense, almost neglect yourself a little bit. And so I love the idea of just like, no, everything's together. We're
Mhm.
not sacrificing anything around here. I love that. Absolutely love that.
Well,
How did you
except
get
for the
into
things that I'm sorry, I was just like got excited about that. Except for the things that you want to, because I believe that life does require sacrifice, but often the things that end up getting sacrificed are the things that we don't want to sacrifice.
Yeah,
So we put
yeah.
so much emphasis on, what's happening on the outside that we forget to take care of home, right? Physically and
Mhm.
metaphorically. So,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. And how did you get into this space of working with women and impacting women's lives in the way that you do?
So you want the long version or the bow version? I would say I'm gonna give you the medium version.
Let me get the mid. Let me get the
Um,
mid.
in some capacity, I've been working with women, all women and girls, all of my life, right? And it's something that I've always known that I wanted to do, but not really sure what it would look like. So I can remember being like 16, 17, doing my own workshops for girls like in my neighborhood and partnering with like Urban
Wow.
League. And yeah, so I always knew that I wanted to work in that space in some capacity. And so looking at what I call my thread, I can see just how each of those that initial seed that was planted has just continued to blossom. So before coaching women, um I owned a concierge service in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, the first of its kind.
Okay.
It was a concierge service for executives and entrepreneurial women who just found themselves very busy and so needed help managing their household so they could focus on the stuff that mattered to them. And so then when the pandemic, um, I decided to start incorporating those principles in a different way for women who wanted to start their own business and was also trying to find the balance. So I just kind of merged the two.
Yeah, that's amazing. As you were speaking, I'm like, I love that concierge service for busy professional for women.
Mhm.
I just, as you were speaking, I was like, huh, there's so many like innovative ways that you can just help the world, right?
Yeah.
So you have this business in coaching. How did, and I know you talked about how you, since you were a child, you kind of just like always been in this space, but like when
Mhm.
did it become like the thing for you? And how were you able to like navigate? Like, was it a easy, always easy? Like, was it just natural? Like, how did you get into the space of like, okay, yes, I am coaching women. This is it.
Yeah, I think it was really coaching women went back to that place because I think in between sometimes you can forget, right? You can um focus more on right your profit than your purpose. And so
Yeah.
I think that if you've ever found yourself there, then you have an understanding of what that is. And so I can remember when graduating college is just trying to figure out, what do I want to do? And I thought that was news and broadcasting. So that is the angle that I pursued, and I went and tried that, but it was just like something kept tugging. And no matter what it was or where I tried to plant my feet, if it wasn't that, and I was always kind of like tiptoeing, no matter what else I was doing, I would still find a way to just like be involved with girls mentoring or doing a program or doing a workshop for women. And so I got to the point where even when I had done the concierge service, that was piecing it together in terms of, okay, this is great, but are you doing this just for the money, or are you on mission? And when I had to ask myself what that was, I was like, okay, I need to be doing it in a way where I can utilize what I call my unduplicatable skills. What are the
Mm,
things, the experiences, the life lessons that I've learned that I can then go out and put into a framework for other women to follow? Because I knew, I always say, sometimes we say, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but we know. It's
yes.
just trying to, figure out what that looks like. So when I started to ask myself those questions, what is it that you actually want to do versus what you feel like you're supposed to do? Even if the something that you're currently doing, you're excelling in, you're making money, is generating great income, but if you still feel unfulfilled, then you have to address that before moving forward. And so that's what I did, and that's how I ended up like staking claim in the coaching space, and as they say, the rest is history.
That is amazing. You said something that I thought was pretty profound. Going like this profit or purpose, right? And I think a
Mhm.
lot of times the profit sometimes can be so good,
Yes.
or the purpose is like it's not it because it ain't profiting, right? How did you navigate that space? Because that's a very difficult space, and a lot of times I find that, like you said, we know what we're supposed to be doing, but
Mhm.
sometimes our mind gets in the way, fear, doubt, and that big P word, profit, also
Mhm.
gets in the way. How were
Yeah.
you able to navigate that space?
So that's a great question, because I think that for me it took a lot of introspection. And when I say introspection, I think that you have to come to a place where you're just willing to put your whole truth on the
Ooh,
table, right? In terms of, yes, this is profitable, it's great, but what is that other thing that is still happening? What is that feeling that is still coming up? And I think
yeah.
once you put your truth on the table and allow yourself to move from that space, which is normally, I know what I want to do, I just don't know how to do it. And so when you recognize that the how isn't necessarily our job to come up with, it is the doing the next right thing, right? What is the next best step that I can take? And I just started to move from that place. And I think when you start to step out in that way, it creates momentum that just allows you to carry yourself forward.
Yeah, you said put your truth on the table. That a lot of times these things are it's simple but yet so hard.
Hmm.
What is the process for that? Because again, just put your truth on the table, and like
Yeah.
it'll start to work out. But it's very very difficult.
Yes.
What was your process of putting your truth on the table? I'll pause there because I have some more questions, but what was your process?
Yes, I love this because I actually wrote about this process in my book that came out this 20,
Okay,
well,
now.
now it's 2024. It came out not 2 years ago now. We're headed on the second year anniversary in March. It's called Give Yourself Grace, Girl. And
Mm,
so I talk about the process in the book, which was that when you are laying yourself out on the table, it's really looking at everything that's going on in your life and asking yourself, the question, and how you know that you're at that point is the number one question you're going to ask yourself is, how did I get here? And when
mm,
that question comes up, you have to really be willing to answer, how did I get here? And
Yeah.
so part of it, really the core of it is looking at all of the things that you've been taught, that you've just accepted at face value, that you have that you have taught yourself or accepted to be true that are not necessarily true, and breaking all those things down and then rebuilding based off of those things. So it's just like, I used to tell myself, okay, I'm not good with money, for example, right? For example, so if you're telling yourself I'm not good with money, then how is that showing up? And is that a true thought? Is there evidence of that, or is that something that you just, is it an insecurity? Is it something that you've experienced secondhand, and now you're afraid to allow yourself the permission to prosper, to have profit, because you don't think that you'll know what to do with it. And so, really getting to the root of those questions and those thoughts and where they come from, even if they're societal, even if they're parental, wherever those things come from, being willing to answer the question, how did I get here?
Yeah. And when you went through that process, I can imagine that there were feelings that may have not, I don't know, been easily, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what was that process for you? Because it requires vulnerability with self, and like
It does.
vulnerability is not necessarily the easiest thing because it just leaves you right, just open to like
Mhm.
experience different feelings.
Yeah.
Um, what were some of those like challenging feelings that you experienced when you were putting it out all on the table?
Who I think the number one thing that came up for me and that I see a lot is this idea that because you made these decisions, because you've allowed these things to hold you back, because you were unaware, that you get frustrated, right? You get angry, you get frustrated because you feel like, well, dang, if these things just lined up, I should be further along. I should be
Yeah, yeah,
here, not understanding, and there's a whole chapter dedicated to this, that you need it all. That's what the chapter is called. Like, you, everything that you've been through, everything that you've gone through, once you
mm,
start to take stock of those things and start to draw a thread between, okay, well, this happened and that led to this thing, and really just start to look at life, even if you didn't understand it, because it's hard to do it when you're in it. But if you're
yeah,
making a conscious choice to go back and look at it, then you realize, like, that one thing led to another, or if it weren't for this thing, you wouldn't be here. If you didn't get this lesson, then you might not have been able to take advantage of that opportunity, and that nothing is, nothing goes to waste. And so an example of that is, the reason I even started the concierge service is because I was on bed rest with my daughter for
mm,
22 weeks. And I remember being so afraid that that she wasn't going to make it. It was a very scary time, and one that I had to let go of control almost immediately. As a type, I don't know if it's like AAA personality, somebody that really valued, like being in control and having to relinquish that. And one day, one of the nurses came in and asked me how I was doing, and your initial response is like, "Oh, I'm fine," but just that day, I was just like, "I'm not okay. I'm not okay." Um, and I just lost it. I remember like tears just like flooding my face. Like it was like a dam had been broken open by her just inquiring about how I was doing. And she told me, she said, that you are baking something. You're getting ready to birth something, and I need for you to focus on one day at a time. She said, just for today, I need you to speak life. I need you to encourage yourself. I need you to talk, speak life into that baby that you're carrying. And she said, because all you have is today anyway. And
mm,
so it was like that moment shifted everything, just like not just the pregnancy, which did allow me to focus on that, and she came at 40 weeks exactly. I ended up doing 22
Uh,
weeks on bed rest. Yes, yes
woo.
ma'am. But also just the way that we look at life, just trying to skip ahead and anticipate, and that's where most of us get lost, is in that anticipation of how's it going to happen, what do I need to do next. And it's just like, if you just focus on what you have to do today, because that's truly all you have today anyway, is today anyway, then when tomorrow comes, then you can do that. And if you keep doing that, then success is inevitable. Whatever you want is inevitable, because you're consistently moving towards what it is that you want.
Yeah, yeah. It's a you said people try to skip ahead. And I think that's even through our challenge, right? Like we don't have to skip it. Like just go through it, you know? And sometimes again it doesn't feel good, but I like the idea of just like not living in the anticipation, which is
Mhm.
extremely hard,
It's
but
hard.
like just surrendering to the process and take all you have is one day. Like I love that and that thinking. And what it sounds like is this like a mindset that you were able to adopt that
Mhm.
really helps you navigate some of those challenging times. And I guess what I'm thinking is like, how do we get to the like what did it for you? I guess was it the nursing experience that where the woman came in and told you about that, where you're like, you know what, let me just surrender? Like what led you to like the surrenderance piece? Because I think that's where people need to be, but
Yeah.
sometimes that's hard for people to get to.
What led me to the surrendering piece is grace. And the idea of grace is that whatever you're experiencing today, whatever it is, you haven't been there before, right?
Yeah, yeah,
As a mom, when you birth a baby, like, this is new for both of you. You're not the same woman that you were yesterday. If you're starting a business, most of us weren't handed a roadmap or a turnkey in how to develop that. As you're stepping into your leadership, as you are trying to lead not just yourself but other people, as you're trying to enroll people in the vision that you have to give yourself grace, that it's not a straight line. It's going to look a little all over the place sometimes, but that messiness is where the lessons come from. And so what I realized is, for a lot of my life, I was so focused on perfection, right? Like, that's the subtitle of the book, is releasing perfection so that you can reclaim your power. Is that mindset shift, that when you give yourself grace and you realize that there is space for you to make mistakes, to fail, to get back up, and that is actually a part of the process, but the part that we usually try to avoid. But it's just like, in order to become a champion, you're going to have to lose. It's what you do after you lose that makes you be able to come back from that.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
once you grasp that, it's a total game changer. And that's more so what I focus on in the process, is just like grace. And so even when you're creating your goals around this time of year, it's just like, are you leaving space for that grace as you're creating them? Because
You
guess
leave
what, we can
grace.
Mike Tyson has a quote, like, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face, but you need to also plan for getting punched in the face, right?
Mm,
And then knowing what you're going to do next. So a lot of times we only plan for that beginning part, but what I've learned is you got to have contingency, which is grace, throughout the entire process.
leave space for grace. I love that. It's like a hashtag or like a shirt
Mhm.
or something.
Yeah.
Leave space
Yeah.
for grace. I absolutely love it. And I'm thinking about myself too as I enter into this new year and like have all of these amazing plans. What's my plan for grace? You know, in
Mhm.
the event I get punched in the face and sat on my butt,
Mhm.
right?
Mm, yeah.
So that is important. Before we wrap up, I do want to uh ask you, like, for people who are listening, who may be going through just a challenge, a season that's just not it,
Mhm.
um, and it's holding them back from their more, holding them back from their purpose. What would you offer them so they can get through this space that they're currently in?
Hmm. I would offer them stillness.
Mm,
I would offer them the ability to come back home to themselves. And what that looks like is oftentimes is where when we are in the thick of a year, a time, a season that is not it,
hmm.
we try to power our way through, right? Let me just push through, let me just get through, let me just try to roll with it. But sometimes it is in that stillness that you can hear. For me, I hear the voice of God. I can hear my own thoughts, because there's so many thoughts and things that you're competing with, that sometimes it's just that you've just been going too fast, too quickly, because there is such a thing as premature promotion, right? It's when
Mhm.
you push
Mhm.
you will your way to it before your character is ready for it, before
Yeah,
you have laid the foundation for it. And so it's like building a skyscraper on a shaky foundation. But if you can get still and access the blueprint, which is you,
yeah.
then you can start to move from that place. But yeah, the more you try to force it, the harder it will be to figure it out.
Ooh, that was a word. Premature promotion, premature promotion. And so with that, it does require us to be still,
Mhm.
learn ourselves, and also
Mhm.
just like, what is this challenge? What is it? What are we supposed to learn from it? Because you mentioned the character piece, which is really big. Like a lot of times our character isn't yet ready for the promotion where God
Mhm.
wants to take us. And we're trying to get to this space prematurely and not learning what we need to learn to get there. We're trying to skip the steps, right? The anticipation of like what we want and what's to come. But just sit in it and learn what you're supposed to learn. I absolutely love that premature promotion. I'm going to keep that in my mind. Like it's almost like a I don't know, an affirmation in a sense. Like I'm not yet there
Mhm.
because God doesn't want premature promotion, because when you have the premature promotion, it may not last. It won't be sustainable. It'll
Exactly.
crumble. We're not yet ready. And so I have to keep that in mind as well, as like, especially people who are maybe ambitious or they want these things for their lives and lofty goals, and you're working hard and you don't get what it is that you want. You just remind yourself the premature promotion. I absolutely
Mhm.
love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. Any final words for our audience?
I was just gonna say, keep those things in mind and keep that ambition. Write it down in a place where you can see it, because I think that is helpful too. So even if you have like a 2018 prayer that you've had, right, but you see it come to fruition in 2024, that is a faith builder. So don't forget what those ambitions are, but be patient as you're in the process, because when you see them come to fruition, and that is where the fulfillment comes from, knowing that you had that initial vision as a leader, knowing that you had that initial dream as an entrepreneur, or whatever it is that you want to do, and seeing the thing that you put down on paper maybe 5 6 7 years ago come to fruition this year. There that eliminates doubt. It eliminates that lack of confidence that we experience when we don't see it right away.
Yeah.
um that is something that's so powerful that it's hard to explain, but when you experience it, there won't be any going back.
Yes, yes, I absolutely believe, and I'm rocking with that. Before we get off, where can everyone find you?
Yes, on
Mm.
Instagram at Coach Rashida McKenzie. I'm also Rashida McKenzie on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Awesome sauce. Well, you heard it here live with Rashida McKenzie. Thank you so much for being here today. We're absolutely phenomenal, and we're able to share so much wisdom that was picked up today in today's conversation. So, again, thank you for being here, and I can't wait to have you back.
Yay.
Thank you.